request. There we go.
There you are. That's good.
Awesome.
Good. Well, very nice to meet you. So you've been involved with Bruce for a while, have you?
I have, yes. We've been meeting for the last couple of years, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And how do you feel you are in terms of self-realization?
I feel like I feel like it's there. Um, and I kind of see it pitter in and out at times. And yeah, I've been watching a lot of the videos for
Hmm.
the last maybe 4 weeks. I feel like I've been watching them pretty much every time I have a break. So it's just as soon as there's space, I'm like, oh yeah, I would love to hear more about that or just let my attention be there.
Hmm.
So yeah,
You seem to be in a really good space.
I do feel like I'm in a good space. I feel that way. It's been a lifetime coming. I don't know if I can say a lifetime. I'm 38, so I feel like maybe the last year or two, maybe year, I'm like living a completely different life. And
Fantastic.
it just it just the shift has been astounding. And sometimes I take stock of it and I recognize that there is so much consistent peace. And if
Hmm.
there's disturbance, peace returns so quickly and easily. And I just remembered a period in my life, many years, where well, really all of my life until recently, that like the lower, heavier feelings were just the norm. I felt like that was just
Hmm.
how it was, how it's always going to be. So,
Well, wonderful the way you've found your way through, really, because some quite intense experiences in the earlier part of life, but Um, you seem to be resting as effortless, impersonal being and have recognized that and recognized the simplicity of it in a way.
I do. Yes, I do. I think, I don't even know if I think, I notice the stories that come up and
Mm.
I see how it could become complicated if I really like bought into the stories. Um, but it is interesting how when I set my intention on realization that more of the stories from my past like resurfaced almost immediately. And
Yes,
it felt like these checkpoints, like what's true now?
yes.
What do you think now? Just what is true?
Mm. Do you feel that they were trying to invite you back into the personal realm to some degree?
I did. I felt it. And I'm trying to reflect on the feeling of it. Because there were times when it felt strong, like there were some times in the last couple of weeks, it's almost like it didn't happen because it feels like it was so long ago, but it really was the last couple of weeks where
Mm.
it felt so strong. It almost felt like all of this wasn't real. The realization that I've recognized
Mm.
and all the things. And it was very surreal, actually. That's how I'll describe it, because I felt like I sort of slipped into a different dimension and I was just sort of
Yes.
all these feelings feel so familiar and it feels so heavy and I just want to cry or it's just like,
Mm.
wait, what is this? But I could name it for what it was in the moment, which felt very powerful.
Brilliant.
Mm,
Yeah, well, that's great, really, because that's how the invitations try to draw us back. Even when there's realization, they do have a little go at seeing if they can grab our attention and put our attention into the familiar patterns and frequencies of experience from the past.
yeah.
So, but it's a testimony to your clarity, really, that you saw it for what it was rather than being drawn in, because it tends to be that those invitations come quite quickly after realization, and then um, sort of everything's thrown at you to try to draw you back into the personal realm, but you saw through it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like the question that will arise is, can I really choose my experience? Can I
Mm,
really choose
mm,
not to engage in this? And it's like the mind stories are so powerful
mm.
around, you know, well, I guess how it uses guilt to motivate
Yes.
behavior.
Yeah.
And it's so like powerful that it feels so real and true
Mm,
that it's just very compelling. It's like, oh, well, you should be this way or you should do this thing.
mm,
And it's like, oh, I can just let this go. I can just simply not participate in that story. And it doesn't have to mean anything at all, is very profound and
mm.
still embracing it.
I like the way you describe that actually, because not participating is a really good way to describe that process because some people feel as though there's some resistance required, but there isn't. It's just that you see it for what it is and you decide not to embark upon that experience. And so it's great you see it in that way.
Mm. And then sometimes when you act in alignment with that, you see the reflections from the world around you, like people's reactions
Yes.
that almost seem to like corroborate the fear or the guilt. And then it almost like, I guess it's like a second invitation that's like,
Yes.
you know, who are you to choose that path? And then it's like, so I recognize like guilt has been such a predominant motivator, if you will, throughout my life. And so it's been liberating to just choose not to engage.
Fantastic. Well, but guilt and blame combined tend to be one of the most devastating combinations in the human experience, really, because it's um it's the way the duality is maintained in one way in relationships.
Mm.
But it's good to see that it's optional, which you have. That's yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks. I think one area, I don't even think it's a point of struggle. I wouldn't call it that, but it's just, I don't know what to call it, but I'm a psychologist. I don't think I shared that in the email. So this transformation or realization that's been happening over time has impacted, of course, the way I see the so-called
Mm.
problems, that are arising,
Yes.
in the work that I do or with clients. And um, I don't know what to say about that exactly because I just approach it differently than I have in the past. But I guess I feel like the pull or the power of like it's almost like persuasion of the client, like for me to go into the story with them.
Yes.
And it's funny as I bring it up, it almost disappeared. I don't think that's a problem, but it's
Well,
making.
it did. No, sorry, Ruth, carry on.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that um, really it's a matter of seeing that from the sovereignty of your infinite nature, that the experiences you've had so far through this life have been ideal in terms of laying the ground for a very unique approach in terms of helping people because the traditional way in therapy psychology is to actually entertain the personal realm so people tell their stories and there can be some temporary relief in bringing them to light in different ways but the ultimate solution is in allowing people to see that throughout all the experiences, we remain as impersonal beings. So the degree to which we're investing our energy in the personal realm is something which is optional, really. And there are two parts to it, I feel. The one is that you'll be able to help people with realization. So those where there's openness, you can actually guide them into seeing the distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode and demonstrate that impersonal being is ever present and the personal mode is something we can activate on our terms actually when we realize. But also for people where there isn't that possibility, it's um, it's it's quite easy with most people I found to explain the way the sort of energy system of the human experience and the dualistic realm works because lots of people are actually investing their energy in experiences which are detrimental to their welfare and very draining without understanding how the system works. So even without realization, it's possible to help people to make that distinction. And there are people I've spoken with, just people locally, where they have no knowledge of realization. They have no idea that I'm involved in anything to do with this. But just on a practical level, sometimes it's possible to explain that the experiences we have, which aren't particularly favorable, are something which we don't need to entertain necessarily, and explain how to do that. For instance, there's a guy I was just having a chat with him one day, and he said, "Well, he said every aspect of my life seems to be in a good place, except I'm still suffering." And he said turns on the news or watches the TV, and then it puts him into a state of suffering. And and I was explaining how we're engaged in what is a kind of energy game, which is where the dualistic realm is trying to draw us in, where so that we'll invest our energy into personalization, and that's when we're vulnerable to the system as it exists. But realizing that we can remain independent of that, um, it's possible for people who don't really have any understanding of spirituality or their infinite nature can transform their life because with this guy initially it was to do with seeing that he he was putting his attention on certain things like the suffering of animals, the suffering of children, the suffering of people in general, and in fearful storylines and things, and that it was disturbing him. But then just withdrawing attention from those topics and realizing that it is like a dualistic game that we're playing, where we can, if we engage with those kind of topics, then they are very draining energetically.
Mm.
And so he was able to see that first of all in terms of the sort of collective invitation. So we're all receiving invitations through the media, through newspapers, through the news, um, just really the mainstream version of life. And he managed to resolve that. So he just withdrew his attention from it, really. He found from there that everything improved because the energy he had been investing was compromising his life experience. So things like his financial situation, his sense of well-being, his emotions all lifted as a result of that. And then there was a kind of stage two, which is where there was still things he was entertaining on a personal level. So there was still an aspect where he felt that people were upsetting him. He was sort of blaming other people for his emotional state. But then really just explaining how the energy system works and how those invitations and those frequencies work, he could see beyond that and he resolved that also.
Mm.
But without so energetically, he's in a much better place. His health, his finances, everything's better. But there's no there just isn't the basis yet for realization of his true nature. That would be a step too far somehow. But I think for you, it's realizing that there are these different options available. So you'll be able to help people depending on what they're able to accept. And but you all know intuitively how you can open up in certain areas where there can be benefit.
Mhm. Yeah, I appreciate
So so that'll be quite interesting. But it's knowing that you're the sovereign being and everything about your life experience, everything you've experienced, the trauma, that you experienced when you were very young, and the career you're involved in and the people that you have conversations with, and everything is exactly as it should be, because really you're going to be able to devise a very unique way of assisting people in terms of freeing them from the energetic implications of the human experience, but also to open the door to realization to those who are ready. And it's knowing that you have everything available to be able to do that. So don't underestimate your ability. Well, that's one of the things, really, when there's realization to begin with, that there can be a tendency to still feel that you're not quite up to it or something. But it's really trusting everything so that whatever you need will be available.
Mhm.
It'll be fascinating because being so young, you're able to um, allow things to develop, but they develop in a really interesting way. I'm sure you found that actually speaking with people is one of the best ways of learning, because they ask questions and it draws forth responses and solutions and things which you hadn't previously considered.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, really.
It is fascinating, actually. So I went into private practice a few years ago, and um, I did have this urge to sort of be independent from like the foundation that I was taught in, and I didn't know what that meant. I just felt like
Mm.
freedom had to come into this work and
Yeah.
just, let something arise. And I didn't know how it was going to come about, but I recognized in my conversations with people for the last 2 to 3 years, it's transformed me entirely. And it's been this like iterative process, I guess, with
Yes.
where it's like we're feeding each other, and then
Yes.
new people arise that are kind of at a different level or a different stage
Yes.
of their own awareness, and it just keeps going like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fascinating the way you see that it's all being guided in a way, and the people that you spoke with a few years ago may have been on a different level, and then as um, your own ability develops, and being able to help people, then the people that show up are different. They're a kind of mirror, or they're just a reflection of where you are. And it's fascinating to see how it works, because you realize it isn't anything you're doing. It's all being guided effortlessly, really.
Hmm. Yes, I would find myself, oh, and this is one thing, I guess it's a synchronicity with me connecting to you, because I would find myself saying things, especially in the last year, that no one had taught me. You know,
Mm.
I hadn't learned it formally to my knowledge. Maybe it had come by in a passive way or something like that. But there would just be moments when things would just like flow out of me, or it happens all the time now. And
Mm.
I remember there was a period when the contrast between my life and the work was stronger, in the sense of like I would have these moments and sessions and I would come out and I was like, whoa, that felt amazing.
Yes.
Now it doesn't feel like such a contrast. It just sort of flows, and it doesn't, it's
Yes.
not like this thing to marvel at anymore.
Yes.
But I do appreciate it greatly. But I just remembered some things would come to me that were sort of like phrases I've heard you use. a
Hmm.
lot, like closing your eyes and almost seeing it life as like a blank screen, like a movie screen even. And I started saying things like this to clients. And then when I came across your videos, you were saying some of the same things. I was like, oh, it's just this realization of unity consciousness that it's not me and it's
Mm.
just coming through all of us at different ways and different
Yes,
times. So it just felt like this confirmation, which was really beautiful.
definitely. Well, in a way, there may have been a residue of functioning through the mental body, through your education and through the conditioning. But what was always there was the ability to function from the body of wisdom, from effortless being. And that's why at an earlier stage there seemed to be a little contrast because there was your normal life, and then there was this knowledge which was just coming through effortlessly, and you were kind of listening to it and you thinking, well, where's that coming from? And then, but because of realization, there's been an integration really. So the predominance of experience really is the body of wisdom, and then the mental realm and the mental, emotional, and physical realms are still fully available. But it's you're functioning from a much more stable platform now, really, and so the contrasts probably dissolved largely.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for it. All my life, I felt like I had to work so hard,
Mm,
for everything. And it's so beautiful to recognize like the grace of life that
mm,
it just has been carrying me this whole time, and it still is.
mm,
Because even that idea that, there's something unique to do with this work, you
mm.
know, even maybe 6 months ago, it felt like this imperative, like you have to figure it out and you've got to plan something and you should structure something and then you should come
Yes.
up, you'll have to come, you don't want to be on social media, but you'll have to come up with a social media. It's just
Yes.
like, and
Mm,
it felt so tense and tight and pressured. And, there was this like defeatist sense of energy of like, all the questions and doubts and
mm,
things.
mm. Well,
And
you see how lots of the conditioning we have, we're conditioned into things like competing and hard work and planning and all of the things which the dualistic realm loves us to be involved in because it requires lots of effort to do that. But
Mhm,
then you discover that actually it's very magical. You don't need to compete with anyone because what you have to offer is completely unique. So there isn't anyone to compete with, really.
mhm,
And when you recognize that, it just becomes an amazing experience where it's just that knowing that there's no intermediary, really. You're just, where there's impersonal being, there's just the flow which is coming through you, which is from your infinite potential. And that evolves and it's being guided in a way where you kind of marvel at it in a way because it isn't anything on a personal level,
mhm.
but it's just the potential is incredible, really.
It is. I'd always marveled about it in artists, and I know you've mentioned that a lot, artists and musicians,
Mm,
and about even since I was young, just seeing that capacity. My brother's a musician, like my father was a musician, and I'd see them in the flow with playing music, and it was like they would be in a different place, and if they were playing with a band, I could see like how in sync they were, and like it was almost like they were hearing things that the body's eyes
yes,
and ears couldn't hear or see.
yes.
And I would just, it was like almost being pulled into it with them when I would
Mm,
watch it. And I just remember over the years, like they've always had that draw towards artists. I'm creative in ways too, and
mm,
but that flow has been something that I've always been like, wow, how do you get that?
mm,
How do you
mm,
access it? And and I think I'm recognizing it's just like you said, it's unique. So in the sense of how it manifests
mm,
here. And so I
yes.
think it's just a matter of leaving space for it to show up.
Mm. Well, even when you were younger and had those experiences, um, it's really because you were already functioning from effortless being that you were able to recognize that um, because you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. But the mind sometimes issues a little invitation saying, well, how can I get there? How could I have that experience? When really you're already there. But, but then you notice that that's what the mind does. The mind's a little challenge where it tries to well, there are two aspects to it really. The one is that in a sort of relative sense, it's trying to divert your attention from the power in the present, which is already there. But in another way, in an absolute sense, it's really making you realize that that clarity and power has always been there. And then you realize that you can disregard the content of the mind when it's trying to bring things in, when it delivers those sort of contracted invitations. You know the source of it, you know it's coming from the dualistic realm, and then you can just smile at it because you know it's just playing this little game. It's
Yeah.
like a little jealous friend, you know. It's like, it's sort of trying to keep you down. It doesn't want you to realize what potential there is.
Yeah, it's so pretty. It makes you want to like cry from joy. I heard someone on a session mention that once, and I was like, yeah, that's how it feels. But I feel that even now as you were talking, because man, it's like if everyone could just feel that way, like how the world would just be a better place.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're here, Ruth, because that's your assignment, really.
Yeah.
And in some way, I'm sure you recognize that there are it's like it is like a big movie in one way, but the people where there is the recognition of their infinite nature, it's being available to allow one's infinite potential to flow through, and then things happen in a really magical way, which you couldn't devise on a personal level. And but it's the more there's that sense of availability in a very innocent way where you're just kind of open, and there's no sense of being in the wrong place, there's no sense of anything being lacking. It's realizing everything you need is already available.
Mhm.
All your experiences, everything you've learned is contributing to your ability just to be able to deliver what you came here to do.
Mhm.
And so it's whatever happens, it's just seeing that it's directing you really into um, being able to serve your true purpose.
Yeah. And there's nothing I have to do to create that or make it.
No, exactly. In fact, it's the opposite of the way we've been conditioned because we've been conditioned into hard work and striving and competing and all those things, when really the way the innocence of your infinite potential emerges is through just being kind to oneself and making every day as joyful and light as possible,
Mhm.
because that creates the space within which things can just come effortlessly.
Mhm.
Because if we're in a space where there's strain and limitation, then the knowledge we need, which just comes through effortlessly, is always the most powerful. But we can't really recognize that if we're in the mode of effort.
Mhm.
So it's a relief to discover that, because you don't really need to be striving and planning. You can just enjoy yourself and just enjoy every aspect of your life in quite a simple and balanced way, but
Mhm.
just allow the things to come forward as they need to.
Mhm.
And being alert to well, really, it's the things which just come through effortlessly, which are the ones to be alert to, really, because lots of people feel as though they need to be striving or convincing someone or persuading somebody, but it's really the things which just come to you effortlessly in the synchronicities
Mhm.
which are of most value.
Yeah, that's helpful. It's very clarifying. Um, my life is the arc of this experience has been, the trauma as about, but then like almost like this upheaval as I decided to let go of all the stories of my life.
Mm,
And
mm,
then it's been like this clearing process, I would call it, because a lot of people and just experiences have sort of like fallen away. And
mm,
I remember there was a period like maybe a year or so ago where I did interpret it as loss, or I experienced it as loss.
mm,
And now I don't see it that way at all. I see it as being all perfect and a part of the story. And
mm,
um and sometimes there's this recognition of that it's like an emptiness, but not in a negative way, because what I used to judge, I greatly appreciate now because I like silence and I like peace and I like to just be able to create the environment and experience the way I would like it to be. And so I realized a lot of what I was exposed to before was felt as like intrusive in ways because it was just so much coming at me and just like I just felt pulled, or I would feel the quality of what was around me in such a strong way, I would probably
mm.
mistake it for myself, maybe
Sure.
like that. So, but now I'm like sitting in this space, and I think sometimes the temptation of my mind is to go towards now what, like, the stories are, um,
Yes.
well, you should just create this experience for yourself, even in my personal life, like,
Yes.
um, because I'm not partnered right now or things like that. And that used to have a much different feeling to me than it does now. Now it just feels like nothing, like neutral, but it
Mm,
would be nice to be. But then, sometimes I look around at the world and I feel like I'm I see how it's almost like I feel like I'm a character in this game.
yes.
And I see everyone taking on their roles and like doing their things. And I feel like I'm this still figure with all of this chaos.
With
And then I'm like, well, what do I do? Well, what should I do? I should do something. And it kind of rises up, but it's
Mm,
less frequent now and it's less strong.
yes.
When I listen to your videos and I listen to you now, it keeps coming back, this sense of just be and you'll know,
Mm,
what to do when it's time
yes.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, effortless being really is quite dynamic in that you'll recognize intuitively when to take action. So the mind tries to create a sort of impulse into activity, but you've gone beyond the point where you would be motivated by that. There's the recognition that action really is based on a sort of intuitive feeling. It's something where there's inspiration, synchronicity, things which are just very apparent, but in a quite a magical way. And it has this feeling of expansiveness. And so you'll know if you meet somebody on a personal level, you'll feel that, or if opportunities arise in a professional way, you'll recognize that also because it always has that feeling of expansiveness.
Yeah. Hmm.
And because you're in a very expansive space, then they can come to you with there's no resistance. It's just it'll just be very easy for them to come to you.
Yeah. I feel that. That's real. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's nice not to feel that anything needs to happen at any particular stage, because I think the consensus reality is that in the human realm, things should happen at a certain stage or a certain age. But when you know it's being guided by one's infinite nature, then you realize that nothing to do with age or preconceived ideas it isn't relevant really. It's just knowing that if it's happening in a particular way, there's a reason for that.
Hmm.
Probably in your current circumstances, because there's a process of integration at the moment,
Hmm.
the higher level of intelligence is actually giving you that space where the integration can take place really easily and effortlessly by having time alone.
Mhm.
And then when there is the opportunity for relationships and things to emerge again, then that would be something which the sort of frequency match would be much higher then. It would be, a much more enriching experience, really.
You saying that, I felt that strongly, and it's been a sense that I've had too. So that felt like a synchronicity as well,
Great.
because I do recognize there was this pattern of, being in the flow and feeling trusting and having faith about everything that's unfolding, and it's unfolding perfectly. And then I would like dip out of that stream and I'm like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna like make this happen with this group of friends or this
Yes,
partner. And it was almost comical the way for the last 2 years, everything that would come together would just sort of fall apart.
yes.
And, not by anything like completely drastic or, traumatic or painful. It was sort of a gentle coming together and a gentle falling apart. But I could see, even as the connection was coming together, I had a sense that these weren't quite aligned
Mm.
yet. And then I also had this sense that because of all the shifts happening, it probably makes sense to let that settle in so that, you know,
Yes,
it's a mixture of frequencies going on at once. So I'm going to,
yes.
catching a bunch of other frequencies that are kind of things that might be phasing out or,
Mm.
shifting.
Mm.
I don't know if that illustration makes sense, but it kind
No, it does exactly. That's really what is happening. I think that because the integration process sometimes brings in a bit of a mixture of frequencies, the guiding intelligence will wait until that process has taken place before it creates something more stable.
of.
But in the meantime, it's fine, to have some fun, go out with your friends but it's just it's just knowing that everything's safe, really, that you can go out, have lots of fun. You can step into the personal mode of experience, be quite outrageous and just have lots of fun, knowing that it doesn't really affect anything.
Mhm.
Uh, but knowing that everything of value will be um, just presented to you because of the stability of the knowing of your infinite nature
Mhm.
and that's that's quite liberating because it's um, when we function from the mind, there's really no foundation to our experience, but with realization, the foundation's very solid, and so you can still play. You can assume the personal mode. You can meet up with old friends, have a wild time, but but there's no seeking in that. It's just for the fun of that experience, really.
Mhm. Yeah. It's interesting, just so many, even in the realm of spirituality, how, a lot of things that are taught can create this contraction around what we're creating or not, like with
Yes.
manifestation. It's just like
Yeah.
there's so many ways it can get tangled up. Like, don't even spend any time on anything that's not connected to what you want to manifest. You could just like have fun and do whatever you want and just trust that, it's
Mm,
all good, and ultimately
definitely.
what's for the best is going to keep arising.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, and in a way, realization is quite different to the way it's portrayed sometimes because it's portrayed as creating this sort of unity and stability, but it's that can be quite sort of monotone. There isn't much contrast within that. When the truth is that when you recognize your infinite nature, then you can engage in any aspect of the human experience, but knowing that that is just a little role. It's like you're a very proficient actress and you can play any role, knowing that you're the actress, you're not the character. So you can portray anything, and but it's very liberating in that way because there's no identification, and the energetic implications of things like wanting a particular outcome or thinking that things should go in a particular direction, all of that goes, and then you just have the experience. And even sometimes we can have a bit of a bumpy ride, but it's seeing that there's always value in the experience. There's always something which where there's a reason for it being a particular way. And sometimes it's sort of guiding us. Um, it's just giving us an idea of what's of value and what we, bringing clarity into what we wish to experience, really.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so lighthearted at that point because then it's just like looking at all the players in a movie and just moving the
Yeah.
characters around and rewriting the script and just playing with the story,
Mm.
which is it's really cool.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, it's great that you've had the patience to watch some of the videos because it's it is really it's amazing the way such a range of people, discuss their experiences of realization and but it makes it quite easy because you can see how things work in lots of different ways and you kind of integrate all those possibilities then.
That's how it felt. It was like this wonderful rainbow of experiences I could look at and just see and
Mm.
really nice. I loved watching the videos and I just felt connected to to the storyline, so to speak,
Mm.
but in the sense of the oneness of it all too.
Yes.
Just
Well,
different.
for you, it's similar to the experiences you describe with your brother and your dad, where you can see something much deeper, but it's because those qualities are within you already,
Mhm.
which is why you can, you derive value from those experiences. For others, some people just couldn't watch them because it just doesn't make any sense.
Mm. Yeah. It's fun to kind of go into other worlds in that way. You know what I mean? It's not another world, but it's just a different experience, I guess, of everything that's continuous. But that's how I feel when I look up at space and the stars.
Mm.
Like
Yes.
when I was little, I wanted to be an astronaut. Um,
Did you?
when I realized most astronauts don't get to go to space, I was like, well, then what's the point?
Yeah, sure.
We want to be in up among the stars, don't we? But I get that feeling that sort of it's like this, it's an arresting feeling, not in a bad way, but
Mm.
it's just sort of like you're suspended,
Yes.
in it when I see those moments.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, it's the contrast really between the human experience and the full potential of the human experience, where one's infinite nature is flowing through and bringing you the most amazing experiences on a personal level, but also that you can rest as the infinite being, which is the totality of existence. So the subject object mode of looking at the stars is that you can have it in terms of the human experience where you're a girl, looking at the sky and seeing all the stars. But then there can be the switch into unity, which is where you're the totality of existence within which the stars and the body, mind, and the experiences are all appearing.
Hmm.
And that just gives a completely different dimension, really.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like you just become one with it when you see it,
Mm.
you know.
Yes.
Like, I
Mm.
just, there's a page on Instagram I follow called Galaxies, and it's just all these different photos of what's happening in space. And I could look at it all day. At work, I'll go work. But, it's like that's the kind of thing that kind of just lights me up, if you
Mm.
will. Yeah.
Mm.
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 Yeah.
So what sort of age were you when there was the transition? Because the intensity of your early life must have been quite distracting in some ways, but then there was a point where you were able to see that in context. What sort of period did that take place?
Yeah, it's really like stunning when I think about it now because um there's so many memories that I don't have from my childhood,
Mm.
likely as a result of everything. And so um and then when I reflect back on it now, there was such a thickness, to
Mm.
everything that it was like, I just couldn't see. It's the best way I could describe
Mm.
it. So I remember that for most of my life, honestly, until the shift started to happen around 2017,
Oh, yes.
I would say.
Mm,
Because a person in my life died very tragically, and there were other traumas happening all at the same time.
mm,
And the timing of it was like, it was so uncanny. It just didn't even feel real.
mm,
And that was like, it really started to wake me up. And
mm,
so, um, yeah. Okay, well, that's interesting now that I'm reflecting on it, because there was always this sense, though, of something beyond
mm,
here. But
mm,
even though I could almost like see it and feel it, it felt like removed from me.
mm.
But I still had a sense of it. And I would say that was there really my whole life.
Yes.
But but the thickness of everything else was so big, and it seemed to grow throughout my life until around 2017. And
Yes.
that's when I, had the grace of the pain, if you will, that woke me up, because I remember it was a therapist who I saw after my friend died, and she mentioned Carolyn Mice to me.
Mm,
If you're familiar with her, but it's something about this idea of soul contracts and whatever she was describing. It was describing things in the unseen realm that I
yes.
had not considered, because I was brought up like very conservatively Christian. And so it's very interesting how there's like this divide around these things
Mm,
that are
mm,
considered to be like
mm.
evil or whatever.
Yes.
But as soon as she said it, I just knew something.
Yes.
I just had a sense
Mm,
of the purpose and everything that was happening. And it was really right when he died. I just knew something in that moment. I had a sense of purpose. And then when she said it, maybe the next day, it came together and something just unlocked in me. And I just knew everything was like really interconnected, and something was happening on purpose to shift something in my life.
yes.
And then I just started exploring. And not long after that, I encountered Eckhart Tolle, like many people who you've spoken to did in their early stages. And um, it's just, I kept hearing things that sounded true.
Mm,
And yeah, and then it just went from there. Like I,
mm.
I had this sense of not wanting to do too much of formal study, though, in anything.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was probably because I was in a PhD program, and I was like tired of the
Mm,
regiment of learning. And there was something in me that liked to sort of intuitively pick up on things and grasp.
mm,
So that just sort of took off from there. And then after that, I felt like I was seeing and hearing things in every experience.
mm, mm,
Like everything, like all the bad things. It was like I could hear the storyline underneath and like the message underneath of it. But even with that knowing that was growing, the story, like the allegiance to the story was so strong that it's like I could see, but at the same time, I was just so in it that
mm,
it,
mm,
so it was just growing until this
mm,
point.
mm. But
Um,
the two things were together by the sound of things right through your life. So there was that deeper knowing, but also the intensity of the human experience. And
yeah.
you can see the perfection in a way in terms of your life because um, you had the sort of full-on human experience as well, which has been really valuable because you couldn't relate to people unless you'd had that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's fascinating, really. I think the more well, as you recognized with the tragedy of losing a friend, you do see the perfection in everything, really, and and seeing that thread as it unfolds through life, where you're not seeing things as going wrong, but you're seeing them in terms of a sequence where you're guided into higher levels of experience. Um, that's much more valuable, and there's less friction involved there. Whereas if we're saying that it's wrong and we're mentally and emotionally disturbed, then that puts the brakes on things a little bit. Whereas if we can see it in that context where and I'm sure just on reflection, you can see that throughout your life, really.
Mhm. I see that even as you were describing it, it was just like, yeah, it was like there was the gas pedal for the seeing, but it was that almost like victim identity through everything that was almost like if they were teetering with each other, it was kind
Mm.
of keeping me going a little slow, you know?
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Mm.
And then it's like letting go of that. It was like everything just went super fast after
Mm.
that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's amazing really to think to recognize that difference. It's so beautiful. It's like, wow. By human standards, it was so bad, you know. But you're right, it made life so relatable because now it's like no matter who I talk to, I feel this understanding, and then it's almost like I could meet them where they are and then move from there
Yeah.
because I can understand on some level like what that is, that
Mm.
feeling, because
Yes.
that range of emotions below the neutral level is so familiar to me, you know.
Yes. Yes.
I get it. I understand.
Mm.
Yeah.
And in some ways, while you know the idea of soul contracts, you can see in some way that you opted for a very intense version. It's like the intensity is something which you sort of agreed to because it's a much faster track of experience because um, it's as though you had really deep experiences and very difficult ones, but you were able to integrate them because of the intensity of them, which means that there's very little residue now. So for you, you're not really carrying anything from the past. Whereas if it's a more if it's a sort of less intense experience for people, then sometimes the residue can continue because the contrast hasn't been so intense, and so it can run for a bit longer. But you went for this sort of fast track version.
Full force, like pedal to the floor. Yeah. Yeah, that's real. I know. Yeah. And it's that I can say that I wouldn't have it any other way is just, it's a marvel because I just remember a time where I never would have thought to say that, but now I say it with like wholehearted authenticity, you know.
Mm.
So,
Fascinating. It's really how the perspective changes in that way.
yeah, it's nice. And I do, I was gonna say I hope. I guess I don't have to hope, but I trust that there'll be a way to help give people, I don't know what I mean by that, because I guess I wouldn't give it to them. They already have it, but just help be a guide, you know, in some,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sure your career um, is something which has guided you to something where there's a wider range of potential available, where you can help people in quite a traditional way, but you can also help them on a high level, really. But I'm sure you can see, well, from your own experiences, the way you describe them, you've had the intensity of those experiences and the recognition that while that's running, there wasn't really much um, that people could say to you. It was because it was the intensity of those experiences where the value was. So in some ways, you can see that with people if they're fully immersed in the intensity of the personal realm, then sometimes it runs its course.
Mhm.
And as it was with you, it sort of it reached a point where there was a seeing through that and just the recognition of the value of it, but in a completely different way, where you're not seeing it as being problematic. Problematic. You're not seeing yourself as a victim, not seeing any kind of misfortune. It's just seeing the perfection of that sequence in the way it was presented to you, which has been a real spiritual fast track.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, there was a period as a psychologist when I would, I say it like it's a past life. I don't really feel like a psychologist. Feels like this identity that I don't fully relate to in a way,
Mm,
because so many, well, this is controversial, but I feel like anyone listening to, what we're saying wouldn't, disagree, but I just feel like so many disorders are just, so rooted in these mind constructs that
mm. Definitely, yes.
hard for me to work in that world because I don't want to help feed that. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Definitely, and quite a lot of disorders, well, they're sort of labeled as being disorders, but actually, it can be when there's a higher level of knowledge or functioning available. So things like bipolar, you know, and different forms of psychosis. It's sometimes that there's the ability to see into other realms of experience, and it's labeled as being problematic, in when really, in the right context, if it's integrated, it's, sometimes, well, those people tend to be hypersensitive, so it's something which, there's a gift there, but it's been packaged in a way by the mainstream version of things to be seen to be detrimental when really it isn't.
Yeah, I feel like I've had a sense of knowing that too, and I just couldn't say it to anyone in my field because then I would be like ostracized. But I'm like,
Yes.
feels
Yeah.
that way, and it just there's this sense like maybe if it wasn't characterized to them in that way of being a problem, there
Mm,
would be more openness to the
mm,
capabilities that underlie those
mm.
experiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
I'm sure it's those aspects that you'll be um, revealing in a way which is beneficial to people.
yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that could unfold.
Mm,
Um, because it's such a touchy area. And
mm.
especially with diagnoses being, I don't know if they would say they're on the rise because I don't really follow research about this anymore. But what I recognize broadly is like there's a lot of identity forming around so many diagnoses now.
Yes.
That It's so touchy, like how it's
Yes.
conceptualized that,
Yeah.
it's people, can get up in arms about.
Yes.
This
Well,
is
you can see how the dualistic realm is like an energy system, and it lots of aspects, certainly of things like mainstream medicine and philosophy, psychology, they're actually in service to the dualistic realm because creating identities where people become attached to a particular human identity is really limiting. But it's designed to be like that in a way because it keeps attention on limitation rather than for the person to realize, well, actually, I'm the infinite, timeless, omnipotent, indestructible being. I'm not this or that. But it's very it's all a bit touchy, really, isn't it, at the moment? You can't say it because there are all sorts of things to do with gender, race, all kinds of topics which have they've been used really in a way which it's a very inverted version of life.
Mhm. Yeah, really. It's like, yeah, so many things like identity wise, like we talk about it, or it's often talked about on the premise of acceptance and embracing, but what plays out is a lot of division and disconnect,
Yes. Mm.
um, under the guise of being connected. And yeah, I feel like in that part is like in part why I've also been a little more siloed because it's like, yes, being a woman or being a black woman or being a psychologist, there's like all these identities that I don't really feel I adhere to based on, what society says they mean, or just don't adhere to them at all. But um so much of your allegiance to them is
Mm.
almost like predicates a certain level of acceptance in ways.
Yes.
And so,
Mm.
yeah.
But it's really nice to know that the solution comes from one's infinite nature in a way where you don't need to create any sort of conceptual framework to support anything because there is just a sense of openness and solutions come in a way, when there's a readiness and so we don't really need to even see anything as being problematic because it just works out. I mean, just if you look at the sort of miraculous nature of your own experience, from the experiences you had as a little girl through to where you are now, it could only have been devised and created and guided by infinite intelligence, really, because to go from the one extreme to the other is just miraculous. It's fascinating, really.
Yeah, I appreciate that redirection. It is easy to get caught up in that idea of like, this is what's wrong in the world, and
Mm,
so where do we fix it? But it's just,
mm.
yeah, that's not necessary. Yeah.
It's funny, really, isn't it? Because on one level, where there is compassion, then there's a feeling of wanting to help others, especially when you see them suffering. But the liberating aspect is you realize that you can't do that on a personal level. It sort of works through you rather than being something that is personal.
Mhm.
And that's when it's much more powerful. But it's it's also really freeing because we're not carrying the burden of that. So it's much more simple.
It is more simple. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what unfolds from
Mm.
uh,
Definitely, yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
um, um, because I do feel more free and just less attached to
Mm.
outcomes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, there's a uniqueness, as there is with everyone, really, but because your experiences cover such a wide range of human experience, it will be interesting to see how it unfolds and what you'll be doing. And that's yeah, that's something which you sort of just witness. You'll see how that will unfold.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to really have the permission to relax.
Definitely.
Just enjoy life and see
Mm,
what comes. Yeah.
mm. And it's for you, in a way, it's very obvious because from the intensity early on, where there was the contrast, where there was the pain and the personalization, um, it's it's very easy to see now by contrast that um, that there's no other option really. That impersonal being is so um, clearly liberating compared to the personal option,
Mhm.
and but that's even more in an intense contrast for you because of the intensity of the experiences.
Mm. Mm. I can see that. Mm. Yeah.
It's been very rapid for you as well, which is great, the way things have, well, probably over maybe a 7 or 8 year period, but it's probably accelerated quite a lot more recently because you find that there are certain things where you're finding your way through, and then the more clarity there is and the more receptivity there is, then the more quickly things unfold.
I noticed that it seems like it'll come in like these little bursts of like
Mm,
some experiences, and then it's almost like a download of
mm.
awareness, and
Yes.
then it goes calm again for a period, and then it's sort of like a little
mm,
a little stir, and then it goes calm. And then every time, yeah, I guess I recognize that. And then it just gets a little more peaceful. It's like,
mm,
and then a
mm.
plateau, and then,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Well, the silence that is emanated is very tangible. It's just it's so nice to just to well, it's a field of unity really, but it's just to be able to recognize that and see how clear it is and how stable.
thank you. Mhm. I'm grateful. Yeah. Now with
Well, it's just your own, it's really just been the sequence, because it's been, I'm sure you've seen it as the kind of gateless gate, which is that you recognize that what you truly are has been present throughout. It's just that our attention sometimes diverted more into the personal realm, but for you, it's been really easy because you've known it all along, but you've just seen it clearly um, more recently, and then that's just brought just real clarity.
Yeah, I think there was this feeling, especially when I saw your videos, even I was like, oh, it's gonna be a long time. I'm gonna have to just be trudging along. But then I just started to try to practice it with everything, I was doing.
Mm,
So it's just always here, and
mm,
it's just always here.
mm.
And it doesn't have to be complicated. And that's just the story you're telling yourself.
Yes. Well, all the conditioning we've had into practices is something we all have to kind of work through in a way that that we try certain things and feel that for it to be valid, it requires some effort, and it takes more just to recognize that effortlessness is so powerful, but it's something which we it's difficult to accept sometimes in the early stages because nobody's ever said that effortlessness has any value really. It's all effort and hard work and
No one ever has told me that. Yeah. It's
Mm,
never been a message communicated to me. So it's just really freeing,
mm,
to not have
mm,
to work hard at something, and
mm.
it's all there. It's all given to you. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, it's lovely to have a conversation with you and yeah, just to see you're just so settled. It's so nice.
Thank you. Thank you for everything, for your time today, but also the gift of the videos, and it's really lovely. It's been a good
It's
help.
it's really it's amazing the way things just sort of unfold from effortless being because there is no planning and there is no sort of structuring and no intention really, but it's just the way things come forward. But the mixture in terms of people's experiences is just so valuable because um, we can. I think the biggest aspect which is really favorable is that we're able to see that our potential is just much more broader than we recognize because um, we're conditioned into the idea that we have a certain personality in certain ways of being and experiencing. But then as you see others, there's a recognition, well, actually, those qualities are also available. And that I find that really fascinating because you can just see that there are lots of aspects of one's potential that we haven't even recognized are available because we were told that, we have certain abilities and certain limitations. But it's fascinating to see how broad it is, really.
Yeah, I think I've got like most of this lived experience has been with ideas of limitation about who I am. person, like you said, personality wise, or even in terms of abilities.
Mm.
And since, really leaning into this journey or realization, I see aspects of myself sort of like blossoming that I didn't know were there. I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that I
Yeah.
could be so
Mm.
lighthearted or joyful or intuitive or
Yes.
and think with life and all these things. And
Mm.
um sometimes I'll say things and someone will say, oh, it's like you read my mind. I was just thinking that. And inside I'm like, wow. That's
Well, you just emanate this calmness and silence, and that's very magnetic in some ways. People recognize that. So even people where there's a big investment in the personal realm will recognize that because that's everyone's true nature, really. But for you, it's just very tangible.
that's awesome. That's wonderful. Yeah. I used to judge that about myself a long
Wow.
time ago. Yeah, because I remember people would say, you're very quiet and I feel so much peace around you. And I don't know why I judged it, but I just wanted to be something else. Like, no, I want to be the sociable firecracker.
I'm sure that's as well, Ruth.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
When you need to be.
Right, I'm not just one thing. That's
That's
fun.
the great thing with realization because you recognize that your true nature is a field of infinite potential. So the limitations which previously applied are no longer there because the full range is available from your infinite impersonal nature to the full-on personal experience, which can be anything really.
That part I'm embracing, and it's very cool to me because I guess there is a part of me that's a bit adventure oriented because I've always loved travel. So that part sort of sparks my interest. I'm like, oh, it really is like choose your own adventure, be who you want to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
And also the sort of multi-dimensional aspect of it is that we can have certain levels of inspiration, certain things we're interested in experiencing, but one's infinite nature will also bring things to you that you'd never conceived of. And that's when it's really interesting because it's like an unknown adventure, really.
That's right. Yeah. I remember in one video you said something like, yeah, you could manifest something like that. You could manifest those things, but it's almost like when you move into your impersonal nature and manifest from that place, it's almost like the infinite being is asking, are you sure you really want to manifest that? Like,
Yes.
I might have something better over here you never thought of.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the way it is. And the more you notice that, the more it happens, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see that.
Mm.
Hmm.
Been lovely to meet you, Ruth. Yeah, so nice.
You too. Thank you for your time. I had a lovely time talking to you today.